Hey, Martha. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you. Hi, cousin.
It's so good to talk to you again. It's been, what, a couple of years, I think.
It's been at least 3.
Wow. Gosh. Has it been that long? I know the last time we talked, my hair was darker. Our kids were younger, and you had fewer books. So
Yes, by a mile.
yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So before we get started, do me a favor. Give the audience just a little background on you.
Okay, so I was, in the former life, I was a traditionally published author, and I had one nonfiction on U.S. orphanages and a couple of novels, wrote for the Washington Post and a lot of other great places like Politicus, Moderate Voice, Wall Street Journal, and I did a national column on politics. And then somewhere I went indie on everyone.
Explain what that means.
I started publishing on my own and went and left the whole agent waiting around business. But I started before indie existed, so.
Yeah, you were doing it before any of us knew what an indie was.
Right, back then they called it something else.
Yeah, you were like a rebel.
They called it vanity publishing back in the day.
Yeah,
and nobody wanted to do it, but it's a completely different animal now.
Isn't it funny? And you know this from writing politics for so long. You just give something another name and all of a sudden it's legitimate.
You get enough people agreeing with you, yes. But at the same time, from doing all of this, I've also learned that if you don't wait for the whole world to think it's a good idea. If you do, just go.
I like that. Let's talk a little bit though, before we get off of that, because you were a political columnist for Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. Really quickly, in 30 seconds or less, your views on what's going on today in politics. Would you still be liking to write about it?
Well, politics is going to be fun for as long as humans exist, because it's really it's a study in people trying to get along. It's like a giant cafeteria in the 8th grade. That's never going to change. And it's particularly fascinating right now because you have such polar. And I think that prior to the last election, a lot of people had decided that things are fine and had stepped out of voting altogether. And I think, and they also had stepped out of activism. They had stepped out of having an opinion. And so a lot of people have stepped back in. If, I grew up in the Episcopal Church. I grew up on a seminary. My dad was a minister. And one strange thing about the Episcopal Church is that although it's set up like the Catholic Church, everything is done by consensus. So you have to go across the aisle to get people to agree with you in order to elect a bishop, whatever. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I grew up watching people who I knew would rather not talk to each other go over and ask someone's opinion. So everything that happens, you can find the good in it. And the good in this, I think, is that a lot of people are getting up and walking over and saying, I really want to understand what's going on with you.
I just wish they would try to work together. And again, this is not a political show. Yeah, it's just, I'm a Baptist. We went across the aisles and shook hands of the, folks behind us. But gosh, it just, and again, we won't go into it deeply. It just makes my head hurt. So,
well, I think that in the beginning, everybody was beating against each other because they thought that would work. And I think what they're finding out is it just doesn't work. And eventually, and I now see that people are starting to talk to each other, and I think that will end up being what works. And
go ahead. Let me get this dog. Annie. She is going to go through that door after him. Come here. Come here. Hold on. Come here. Monster.
Horrible.
This dog, she's the scourge of the backyard. She showed up at the back door the other day with a crow in her mouth.
It's impressive.
She's something else. She literally, I have pulled her off of squirrels and chipmunks and I'll edit all this out.
You could be pulling Lois off of one of those. It'd already be dead.
Huh?
I said you wouldn't have to pull Lois off. It would be dead.
What is Lois?
She's Great Pyrenees and Catahoula, and she's 95 pounds and a hunter.
Yeah, she probably takes dumps bigger than Annie, because Annie's like 4 pounds. But that dog will sit on the deck, I mean, like a lion on the prairie, just not moving for hours, waiting for something to run by that she could pounce on and kill. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll edit the dog portion of the show out. Don't worry about that. So, all right, so I'm going to count us back down. 3, 2, 1. We'll start again. My apologies. 3, 2, 1. So let's get off politics and let's talk about something fun, which is your career and your books. Like I said, it's been a few years, and I was looking at your Amazon page. You've been kind of busy, my dear, writing all kinds of stuff. I think the last time we talked 3 years ago, you had 2 or 3 books.
I think I only had 2. Well, I had 2 in the series, and then 3 books. So I had 5 altogether. Yeah.
So now you're at what, 15 books, and you've got anthologies, and you are co-authoring with folks, and let's talk about that, because the audience for this show by and large are writers who want to know how you do what you do and how they might be able to do it too. Let's kind of go back through the progression of it. Okay, 3 years ago, tell us about the 3 books that you had then.
Okay, so I did have traditionally published 2 novels and 1 nonfiction. I lived on U.S. orphanages for a couple of years and wrote a really great book, Place to Call Home. And this was prior to the internet, when the internet was just being born.
Wow.
And when I talked to you last, I had 2 books in a series. And then I kind of had stopped for a while because the first novel I wrote sold really well, but the series just wasn't really going anywhere. And I was looking for an answer before I was willing to go further. And then I found the answer.
And for $9.95, you too can have the answer.
You can actually have the answer for free.
For free? Well, let's keep them hanging for a minute. Let's not go there yet. But I want to talk about that first book, because that was traditionally published. Did you go the agent route, or was that the fiction or the nonfiction book?
Fiction. And the fiction book, I went the small house route. Because remember, in the old days, a lot of people started with the smaller houses where you didn't need an agent. And it was a thriller.
Right. Tell us a little bit about that. That was the first Wallis Jones series?
No, that was Wired. That was a long time ago. It was
Whoa.
Wired.
So let me update my notes.
And it was an independent, it was a standalone book, and did super well. Even got optioned a few times for film. Every now and then a producer will notice it again and call and say, hey, is this option? Whatever. And got loads of great letters from people back when people had to send you a letter. And it was a great start. But one of the things you learn in this business is the progression may be up and down. It's not going to be a straight line. Right.
And just because you sell a book and you get all kinds of options and stuff, sometimes those do not come to fruition.
Oh, most often they don't.
Yeah. What was Wired about? Remind me.
Wired was a small town, and I was fascinated by this. I had just seen where they caught yet another serial killer, and they were interviewing the neighbors. And the neighbors always have a deer in the headlight look. And, the person with the microphone is saying, well, he did this and this and this. How did you not know he was crazy? But you're not thinking that must mean he's burying bodies in the yard. And so I took that and thought, what if you had a good idea that something was up and said nothing? Would you be responsible? And I just kind of grew it from there. It was fun.
Interesting. They always say he was a quiet man.
Well, they say all sorts of strange things, but you sometimes, the majority of the time, it's just a strange neighbor.
Yeah. Gosh, I could have a neighborhood full of serial killers here in Alabama.
Right. Exactly.
So you had some success there. You plowed ahead. The Wallis Jones series, those were, tell us a little bit about those, because you've got what? Is it 5 or 6, 7 of those now?
The series is done.
Okay. And what was the premise there?
Okay, so they're conspiracy thrillers. It's one long continuous story. And I wanted to tell the from a family, and a woman in particular, who's not the sort to break a heel and fall over and ask for help. She actually can stand up and works with others. But I broke a trope in thriller land that I didn't even realize I was breaking, that was kind of the kiss of death for Wallis. And I wrote the Wallis Jones series is one long, continuous 500,000 words series.
Wow.
And in thrillers, they want they love the same recurring characters, but they want each book to be able to stand alone.
Right. And those didn't, because they were sequential. They just continued the story. Yeah.
It's a good story, and it is based on actual events, big picture events. Because if you do read, if 5 people out there do read them,
I read the first 2.
Okay, well, if you keep reading, all the things that are the bigger things that are named in there are actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And but I broke a trope and learned what happens when you break a trope.
Those tricky tropes.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it funny? That goes back to, we were talking before we started about the formula that is working a lot now, and that I think following the tropes is one of the big keys because readers expect what they expect.
Yes, they do, and they will prove it to you
by their pocketbooks,
by their lack of interest.
Interesting.
So I became a case. I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but what ended up happening was I became like the perfect case study of try it this way and then try it that way. And
you tried it until it obviously worked for you.
I did. So I was doing, so I released the whole series, and I used the rapid release method where the books are all together, etc. And I kept saying, it's just data. If it doesn't work, I'll do something else. And it didn't work, so I did something else.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about
to give it away before you want to give away what I did.
Let's talk about it, because what you have done, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you really have shifted gears in the way that you think about the marketplace, in the way you do what Chris Fox calls right to market. And, it's kind of a whole shift in thinking, and you're doing your darndest to train me, but I'm an old dog. So, but
you're younger than I am.
Well, not by much.
But a year.
Well, look at this hair. I got a backlight for my video set, and so I blame this. My hair is actually dark brown, but it looks gray on camera. So let's talk about the shift then. That from where you were 3 years ago, the last time we talked, to where you are now. You have quadrupled the number of books. You've got success going on. Tell us what happened.
So I was mentoring a teenager in high school who had already written 2 space operas. And I got an email that said this man was speaking in Austin at a writer's group, and he had been writing at the time for about 5 months and already was making 6 figures per month. And I thought, and then I read it more carefully because I wanted to see if it was nonfiction, because I'd heard that before, but this was fiction. Mm-hmm. So I wondered what the catch was. And I said to the young lady, let's go find out, because I figured at the worst I'd maybe pick up 1 or 2 tips. Yeah. And there were 90 authors.
Define the term space opera.
Space opera is it means there's a lot of it's very character driven, and it's sci-fi, but it's more about the characters than the shiny machines. Okay. And so there were 90 authors in the room. And I was sitting in the back, and I figured this would be good for the young lady with me at the very least. So I was paying attention, but I wasn't attached to I'd better get something out of this. Right. But about halfway through, I realized that he had actually found the thing I'd been looking for and was putting it to good use. And then at the very end, he said, I'll stay. His name is Michael Anderle. Mm-hmm. And at the very end, he said, I'll stay as long as anyone has a question. And I wasn't going to stay because I had to drive the young lady home, and we had a time. But at the door, I turned back and realized only 2 people had gone up to ask him a question. So I said to her, I'll be right back. And also, the other authors around me were saying things like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or I want to write what I want to write. I don't know. They were just bolting for the door. Yeah. So I went up to him and asked him a question. He said, email me later. And here we are. And that was July of 2016, July 31st.
And that meeting, which I have seen on video, I didn't see you. I didn't realize you were in the room, but I've watched that video multiple times. Meeting Anderle there really did kind of change things for you, didn't it?
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
So it started out slowly where he had a group called 20 Books 50K on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he hadn't hit 50 people yet, and it's at 800 now.
Right.
It hadn't hit 50 yet. And so I was able to ask tons of questions. And I realized right away that I was going to have to ditch everything I knew in 30 years of my style of publishing and just start over.
Yeah.
And I wanted to finish the series regardless. So I am glad I finished the series, regardless of, you know, how it earns about $5 a day. And as Michael's always saying, it's $5 a day.
It's $5. It's
That's
a
right.
Starbucks a day almost.
Well, and it adds up, 150 a month.
Yeah.
So I am glad I finished it, and we followed it along, and then it did almost nothing. I mean, at one time it was doing $17 a day, so that was like, woohoo. Then I said to him one day, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. And he asked me a bunch of questions about what I wanted to do, then called me back and said, would I be interested? I heard him say, would you be interested in starting a universe with me? He now claims, he said, do you want to write a couple books with me? Mm. So we started a universe.
Let's talk about that universe a little bit. And actually, let's back up. Michael is going to be on the show coming up in a few weeks, and we'll go in depth in his process. But I really want to talk about what you learned from him, and you talk about how you changed your way of thinking. And I find it fascinating that, 98 out of 100 authors walk out of the room calling, this guy just a joke, when you went up to him, and now a year later, you've got all of these books and all of this stuff is happening. So there is a formula there. Tell me what you did working with him. Was it at the point where he called you up and said, do you want to write a couple of books, or do you want to create a universe? Is that really when things started to turn? I would say, because what changed was, I didn't know it at the time, but what was going to change was the literal sentence structure of how I write, and also the addition of scenes that have nothing to do with the plot. And so, I mean, there were actually literally things in the style of writing that changed that have really made a huge difference. Like what?
Like adding, when you write thrillers, everything has to do with the plot. You never slow it down so much that people are standing around.
Right.
And he said, my fan base hates angst. You got to cut it out. And also, in order to cut out the angst, the interior thought goes down. It all becomes much lighter. Mm-hmm. And so there are scenes in the Leira Chronicles, which are part of the new universe, the Orsaran universe. There are scenes where she is at the bar with what are called the regulars. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing at all to do with the plot. And the readers love it. And the odd thing is, even I know the plot didn't suffer as a result. It's not like the plot gets so thrown out that you wonder it's weird how it all ended up working. And then the point of view, I was always taught, you keep the point of view of whoever leads the way. Nope. And so things can be said from the narrator, just straightforward. He did this, or they saw that, and it doesn't have to be, there's no point of view. It's amazing.
I'm sitting here scratching my head as an old writer, because like you, I was taught, and I actually teach, plot driven. You've got to have the in-depth characters, but if something doesn't move the story along, don't include it. But what you're saying is from the other side of things, it's okay to include that stuff. In fact, it's preferred.
No, it's a definite. It's not just preferred. It's a rule. And so when Michael and I put together, so we're co-authoring these books, and when I put together the beats, the scenes, we do every scene, you know, we write out scenes. I make sure that we don't have too much drama without being broken up by a scene that's lighter.
Yeah.
So it's not a preferred, it's a definite.
And you know what? I find that very interesting because I've read a number of Michael's books, and I've read, you know, I'm going through yours now, and there were times when I would go, why is that there? Why is that included? And now, so I guess if you approach things not as an old writer like me, but as just a reader in this particular genre, that is what is demanded of the work.
Not genre. That's the other weird thing he noticed. It's not genre driven. It's type of reader driven.
Okay.
So his first universe is Crotherian Gambit, which is sci-fi. For the majority of it, it's sci-fi. This universe is urban fantasy, which means magic in a realistic setting.
Okay.
And Michael is a whale reader, which means he reads very fast and he reads a lot. And he knew what he liked. And so he was tailoring what he was writing to what he liked. So this is not pointed at a particular genre. This is pointed at a particular reader, which actually, once you think about it, makes sense. It'd be like building a house because you wanted to build it the way you wanted to build it without taking into consideration who might want to buy it, and then wondering why no one wanted it. And then walking around saying that your artistic license meant more. It's a combination of the two, and the reader shouldn't be left out of it.
God, you're blowing my mind here. Now, granted, there's not a whole lot left to blow. I've used it quite profusely over the years, but it really does it. I don't want to say it's counterintuitive to the old way of doing things, but it really is.
No, it is.
It's more. Go ahead.
Well, once I really could wrap my head around it and shake off these rules I've been using forever, it's actually easier. And it's not, and now the old rules seem a little stilted, a little artificial. And this is more fun. I'm actually having a lot more fun. And here's the weird part. So these books are a real reflection of Michael and I. So they're snarky and they're swearing. And you think, so they're fun to write. We break all the rules. And the number of times a review has said, these help me get through the night. Or I'm in a lot of pain all the time and these books help. We get so many notes like that. And that was unexpected. That was totally unexpected. So here we set out to just have some fun and write these books, and they turned into a lot more.
So basically, Martha, what you're saying is you take more into account the person reading the book, and you write to that person's liking, and not necessarily to the way that you and I as old writers had been taught to do. And it seems like it's a much more simplistic process. Do you produce more doing it that way? I
produce more, and I sometimes I wonder if what the old way I was writing to a handful of industry people so that I could get through all the gates, and now I'm writing to the end user, which is what I wanted all along anyway.
Right.
And I do write more, but it also has to do with discovering Scrivener, and which is a software, and writing out all the scenes, and I'm having fun. I mean, fun helps. And you know, that's the other thing too. I walked away from thrillers, which I'd been doing forever, and now I'm doing elves and trolls and magical worlds, and the Troll's hilarious, and I'm having a lot more fun too, so that helps.
How did you guys come up with that world? How did you decide to write that?
So Michael had this idea in the first place about history. And like, there are actually people who believe and have physical reasons, scientific reasons why they believe that the pyramids were built thousands of years before common knowledge says they were built, things like that. And he had this idea about this other world that is in another dimension, but every, I think it's 25,800 years, they come together and these gates open and the magic from this other world flows into Earth and kind of settles. And then it takes some thousands of years before the gates start to close again. And these two worlds have been intermingling like that for millennia. And that was the start of it all. And I just kind of ran with it from there.
And so you guys are co-authoring the books, and you work on, I would assume, the characters and the plot. One of the things, the best part of writing books is cashing those checks. Let's talk a little bit about the numbers side of thing. I don't want to be too incredibly nosy, but I assume that the books are selling well. You're building a fan base.
Well, we already said it on another show, so I'll just tell you.
Okay.
Okay. So, and also, I think last month, all of Wallis Jones, the 6 books, made about $185. Mm-hmm. So just so you have an idea. And they're all in KU, or Kindle Unlimited, just like the Orsarin series. And the Orsarin, the Leira Chronicles, I think there were last month, because it just started July 31st. We published the first one to the day of when we met. So there were only 3 books that kind of came out over the course of a month, and we still made $13,000 and change.
Wow. I finally have a cousin that's got money. That's one thing we didn't mention, is we're far off cousins. So all right, let's go back to the timeline. The first book was what? Quest for Magic?
Quest for Magic, which is a prequel. It's 18,000 words, so it's shorter.
Okay, so it was shorter, but it set up the main characters. It set up the premise of the story. Okay, and I want to talk a little bit about world building in a minute, but that set it up. And then what was the second book?
Waking Magic.
And it came out how quickly after the first one?
2 weeks later.
Okay, 2 weeks later, and it was how many words?
Actually, it might have been shorter than 2 weeks. It might have been shorter than 2 weeks.
Because that's another Anderle tactic, is to get books out quickly. To
get books out in a certain amount, in certain space time, correct.
Yeah.
And that's because Amazon promotes books under 30 days. Whale readers like to wait till there are 3 titles. Mm. You put those 2 together, it helps make them aware there are 3 titles.
All right. So you came out with the first book, which was the prequel. 2 weeks or so later, you came out with the second book. And then what was the schedule on the rest?
Actually, I think, to be honest, I think that first book came out days later, because then the next one came out 2 weeks later, which was Release of Magic. Release of Magic. And then about 2 weeks after that came out Protection of Magic. And that's where we are right now. So you literally came out with 4 books over the course of 4, 5, 6 weeks? 4 weeks. Dang. Look at you. I know.
Do you remember the good old days when we would sweat over a chapter for 4 weeks?
Oh, I know. Yeah. And these books are easier to read, so go figure.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us what's the story there of the series?
So it's an Austin detective named Leira Berens, and she's 25, and her mother's in a psych ward when the story opens, and her grandmother disappeared 4 years ago, and she lives in a guest house behind a bar on Rainey Street. And in Austin, Rainey Street is these cute cottages that have all been turned into colorful bars. Mm-hmm. And she's not really close to anybody, but she has these regulars who look out for her. She has an older partner, Hagen, that she in her own weird way is close to, but she's not very good at the whole feelings thing to begin with. And the book opens when she starts to see things and worries that she's going crazy like her mother, because her mother talked about a magical place and elves, and that's why they locked her up. Mm-hmm. And a portal opens, and the light elf king asks her, he needs her help to find his son's killer. His son's killer was a human, and so he needs a human detective, and that's how the story opens. And that took place in the prequel book, The Quest for Magic. Okay. Yes.
And over the course of the next 4 books, and full disclosure, I'm midway through book 2 now. The story continues over the course of those 4 books.
Yes, and when she is in Orsarin the first time, she does something that the light elf that kind of who becomes her sidekick or her person next to her, other character, Korik, tells her don't rescue a troll. They're 5 inches tall.
I love the troll. He's my favorite.
Whose favorite is he not? Did you notice the mug? It says "Got Troll."
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, and so she inadvertently rescues the troll, and in the prequel, that's when he flies through the portal with her, and the troll is the comedy relief, and so is Hagen for every book. The troll is adored. And his name doesn't hurt either.
And are we selling little trolls in our little store?
Well, we're selling mugs.
Well, we've got to have little trolls.
And tote bags. Well, we've talked about that. We've also talked about doing short animations with the troll that just star the troll.
That could be interesting. So you're in 4 books now. Does the story resolve at the end of 4 books, or is this just one chapter and then you've got more books coming?
So the first stories of why the series started, what was stolen from the dead prince, and who killed him, and all of that gets resolved. And where's the mother, and where's the grandmother? All of that gets resolved. But we'll soon be starting on the next arc of 4 books with the same characters and another adventure.
Yes. So there's a term there, the story arc. Yes. If you will. They're going to be like a series of adventures contained into
4
multiple books each time.
Correct.
Yeah. And you and Michael are writing these. And I know you and I have talked about, looking at perhaps doing something. Is that something that you and Michael are both on the lookout for? Is there always the folks watching this, if they've got a great idea to pitch, is that something that is open for you guys? Talk a little bit about that, because it's one of the things I like about Michael and I like about you is there seems to be a sense of actually helping other writers.
Yeah.
You and I both know, and God love them. A lot of them are my friends, but they're writing for themselves and they don't really care what happens to anyone else. It sounds like to Michael and with you, there's more of a giving back kind of feel.
Well, and also the type of person who feels like they're writing for themselves probably wouldn't play well with us. So we're looking for the people who want to work with us and are willing and are open and giving. And we created the universe with the idea that other writers would join us and play in those rules. And yesterday, from when we're taping this, Sarah Nofke published House of Enchanted, and that's in the Soulstone Mage series, and that's the first writer to join us. And tomorrow, Abby Lynn Noor in her book Descendants in the Casey Chronicles is the second series. And we have 2 more coming in October, and we are talking to 3 more authors, and then you. So we're just going to keep growing the urban fantasy world there. So
the setup there is if writers have, first of all, they need to be familiar with the series and the world and that sort of thing. They need to read those books. But then if they have ideas,
they could pitch
playing in that world, they pitch them to you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's really not that tough.
Yeah.
Really, it's willingness and the ability to work cooperatively. And if you have a good idea.
And so if that happens, let's say, we're just going to use me because I'm sitting here. I come to Martha and I say, cuz, I got a great idea. I pitch this to you. You say, great, let's pursue it. What is the process there of actually putting things together?
So then I have you write 3,000 words just mainly so that we can see if you're on the right track and have you gotten that sentence structure style down and make sure you're on the right track. And then we do an outline so at least the first book. And so one other thing about Michael that has really changed since I met him is he has a company called LMBPN Publishing, which is probably what he's going to talk to you about more. And he's becoming more of a publisher than an author.
Right.
And so the advantage to being in this universe is the access to artists and to use the back office doing a lot of the work that these days an author has to do, you don't have to do. So we kind of get you into the system. So it's like he has created this publishing company that is a hybrid of traditional and indie. It's really not one or the other, and it's the best of both worlds.
And what is the financial arrangement on it?
So the author receives 50%.
Okay.
And a lot of the things that the author would normally be paying for, the publishing house, LMBPN, picks up. And that it's very straightforward. It's like if you got signed by a traditional house, but they paid you what you deserved.
they paid you what you deserved. I like that. So a lot of it is the business side of writing, if you will, is kind of taken off of the author, which is kind of cool because, I mean, the one complaint I hear from every author I know is, geez, I just want to write, you know, I want to produce. I don't want to get into the marketing side. I don't want to have to do all of that stuff. It sounds like with this kind of arrangement, a lot of that is done by the publishing house.
A lot of it is, but not all. And also, you and I both know in traditional world, unless you were already famous, you were doing all of it. They didn't do marketing. Right. So there's actually more of the marketing done for you here, but also there are those who will teach you what you could be doing on your own to make your series go even further. And besides the fact that we're pushing it and cheering you on as well. Mm-hmm.
Which is very important because I think, you know this as well as I do, writing can be a very lonely business.
Right. Even traditionally published.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here with, I've got 5 dogs here and 5 more downstairs, but they don't talk. You know, they don't participate in the daily thing. So just having that feedback, I think, and that connection is really important all the way around because it can be a lonely business.
So this is the first, so I've been writing for 30 years, and this is the first time I've really had an ongoing community. And we're connected in something called Slack, which is a software where we there's channels and we can all talk to each other constantly. And so, yeah, and all the authors from his other universe are in there. And so we're able to talk about anything. And yeah, it's the first time that I've ever found a place where there's constant reflection, feedback, cheering, you can do it. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it does. I want to play.
Come up with a good idea, cousin.
Oh, see, there's the rub. I got to come up with an idea. So, so what is on the horizon for you? Are you going to keep writing in this particular series? You got other things coming up?
Yeah, I'm going to keep writing in this. So I am collaborating with all the authors who come into Orsarin and helping them to succeed. So that's a lot.
And you have how many now?
We have 4. We have Abby Lenore, Sarah Nofke, Sarah Boyce, and Flint Maxwell. And we're talking to several more this month who've been patiently waiting because we wanted to at least get 4 out the door before we started adding more people, and we wanted to get things set up. And we're looking at doing video shorts of the troll. Yum, word I can't say, Tiberius troll. And you'll have to go and look in the book if you want to know the troll's name.
Yeah.
And I have really enjoyed collaborating and participating. So at least for now, I don't see changing that. And also, by the way, too, the relationship I now have with the readers on Facebook in particular is so much more intertwined. And I love it. Yeah. I give away, I'll tell you the truth, and anyone who's listening, that's fine. They'll find out. I give away mugs like candy. And I mean, someone writes something sweet to me, I pretty much send a mug. A troll mug. It's a troll mug.
Yeah. Well, I think you understand the relationship there with the readers, because a lot of times as an author, you don't have that. No, you don't have readers to start with, but once you do, you've got that community going now, and it's really fun to build a relationship, right?
Right, and that's the right word, is community. I can't speak for other authors if they have such a daily interaction going, but Michael started it, and the troll greased the wheels for me, and So it's a daily thing where there's notes back and forth. And then something else Michael started in his books were author notes, where he would write a personal note. Now, Michael, in his author notes, was very funny. And I was thinking, I'm very funny in fiction, but I'm not so funny when writing about myself. And I just had to make the choice. I remember Oprah saying she wanted to be Barbara Walters, and she finally had to stop that and be Oprah. And I thought, I'm just going to have to go with my strong suit, and mine is just telling the truth. So I talked about surviving cancer and why I wanted to be a writer, and that it took so long to get here. And a lot of the Amazon reviews mention the author notes. Yeah. And that helps build the community as well. So I really want to emphasize that I don't see it as like me and the readers. I really see it like us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I commend you for that, because it does take a big chunk of time out of your day interacting and being on Facebook and packing up troll mugs and that sort of thing.
Well, I don't have to
but it's all part of it, right?
Yes, it is. But the Society 6 is where I have to go on there and get it, but they take care of all the shipping and sending. And fans can go and buy the one on Society 6. They don't have to wait for me. Just search Michael Anderle, his name, and all the lovely stuff will pop right up. But I keep it on and I answer right away, and that way it doesn't pile up. And imagine 30 years of trying to make a dream come true, and it finally does, and someone writes to you and says, I had the worst week ever, and your book made me feel better. I mean, I'm happy to write you back.
Nice to hear, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm happy to write you back.
Well, I think it's so cool where you are and where you came. Like I said, it's been about 3 years since our last conversation. And I know at the time you and I commiserated like old, damn it, why isn't anyone buying these books? We're brilliant writers. What the hell?
I don't think we were quite that.
Huh?
I don't think we were quite that angry, but go ahead.
Oh, I was angry. I just wasn't. Yeah. Oh, please. No. But I am energized by what you have done and how you've done it, and just to know that there is a process, and the fact that you guys are doing this, you're giving opportunities to other writers who might never have had those opportunities, but there has to be that shift in thinking.
Yes.
If you and I do something together, boy, I'm going to have to unplug a lot of old ways. I got to tell you.
That's true. That seems to be the hardest part is letting go, at least for people who come in as old, as writers, been doing it for a while, is letting go of what you were told you absolutely had to do. But to me, that pointed out that maybe we weren't thinking enough about the readers, and we're thinking far too much about the gatekeepers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things I hope Michael's able to always do is he has scooped up a lot of great people and turned them into even better writers.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, myself included, were people that the industry had kind of overlooked. And he took this, he redirected us in really, when you look at it, minor ways that all added up. And suddenly, we have this thing going. I mean, it's just the most amazing thing. Yeah. How many people he has now turned their life into something that they just hoped would happen. And we're about to do it again with a bunch more. Yeah.
Awesome. I am so glad we reconnected.
Me too.
Because gosh, now, like I said, what's the old saying? I got a mind full of junk and I need to empty it out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I have you.
Magic.
I have you to help me do that through the power of magic and the power of the troll. Yeah. There you go. That's what we're going to do. Martha, always fun. If folks want to find out more about you and your work and everything that you have going on, where do they go?
The best place to go is on Facebook. Is to the Oraceren Facebook page or the Martha Carr, Carr author page. Okay. And like I said, you'll see they rate you now on Facebook on how responsive you are. I don't know if you noticed that. And you get a color, green, yellow, red. And you'll notice that it's 100% responsive on those pages. So I would love to hear from anybody, and I'll write you back.
Awesome. Hey, continued success. Keep at it. The next time we talk, you'll probably have 50 books or.
Well, maybe the next time we talk, we'll be talking about your series in Orison.
I know. I have an idea about an old guy in Alabama who sees a portal, and I'll have to send you more details on that.
Right.
But Martha, always a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.